Record. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Robby Jeffrey, and I'm the one who's kind of leading some info sessions on the various steps and how to kind of do them the best as possible. So today we're talking about step 2, and the goal of the whole study is to demystify each step one by one. So we're making our way through. The 12-step workbook that we are using is called The Steps to Freedom by Doug Weiss, and other books very similar to it exist, but they do great work, but this is the one that we are currently using. So yeah, my goal for today is to give an overview or a snapshot of what step 2 is all about. I'll invite you to crack the book while we're going through this and take a look at things. Just again, the whole goal is to familiarize yourself with the work so that it's easier when you come to do it later. And this book that we use, there's nothing magical about it, The Steps to Freedom, but it's just an opportunity, and it creates a framework within which you can pursue or grow and pursue recovery. So that is all that it is. I would encourage you to treat the workbook like a journal and just write everything down in it as you're going through. Write in your answers so that they are something that you can share fully with someone when you go and share it with others. So step 2 says, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And there's a Bible verse that I feel works really well with that, and it kind of goes along with it, which is Philippians 2:13, which says, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose." So as a reminder, throughout the step studies or throughout the steps in general, the word we is used instead of I, because the 12-step program is meant to be worked in community. If we isolate during this process, it is very unlikely that we will complete the 12 steps. And even if we did, we wouldn't get the most out of it. So really it is meant to be a time or a journey that's done in community and not just of ourselves. So the purpose of step 1, as a review of last week, was to strip off any last lingering thoughts that we might just be able to fix ourselves. That was the whole thing. It's kind of removing that idea that left to our own devices, we can do this on our own. So that was what step 1 was all about. And hopefully you believe this. Hopefully that's something that you've come to through this journey. And you've admitted this before God, before others, and before yourself. So step 2 then seeks to fill the vacant position of, so who has the power to actually help me then if it's not me? So in step 2, we begin to understand that God's power can change us and our situation. And once we tap into that power, the right actions or Christ-like actions will follow naturally as byproducts of working the steps and following the one and only higher power, Jesus Christ. So relying on our own power and our own strength is what got us here in the first place. Definitely for me, there were many times when I knew I was doing something wrong, and I tried in my own meager ways to try and change things, but it wasn't enough. It didn't actually, lead to recovery. We believed that we didn't need God's help or strength or power, at least at a certain time. And it's almost like we were disconnected from our true power source, and now we are reconnecting. So if you think of it as like almost like a power socket, we have something that we need that's going to power us. And instead of having that plugged into the wall of God, where the mains of the power and electricity are flowing through the walls, we plugged it into ourselves, and we figured that somehow we could power ourselves, even though that's not kind of how it works. So in the same way, we need to be, unplugging from ourselves and pretending that we can kind of do this on our own, and plugging into God, the true source of that power. So the good news is that there is an almighty power that is far greater than us and far more than enough powerful to help us. Our job then is to acknowledge Jesus Christ as that power and to posture ourselves in such a way that we rely on his strength to guide us in all of our decisions for the rest of our lives. Step 1, the reason we don't want to stay on step 1 is because it can seem kind of hopeless if we feel that we don't have the power in ourselves to help ourselves. But step 2 says there is the source of that power, there is a hope, and it's meant to kind of give us that encouragement we need and that outlet that we need to kind of plug into so that we can actually have the power to proceed in our recovery. So step 2 is a hopeful step. It's a encouraging step that shows us where that power lies. So the goals of step 2 are then to to identify Jesus as our higher power. Within the texts of AA, they just leave it as higher power, and that is how it's written. But for us in this group anyway, we do encourage, and from my own life, I can state that the power of Jesus Christ is what has helped me in my recovery to journey further on. Another goal of step 2 is to provide us with hope. Like I mentioned, this is essential to recovery. If we came in here and all we ever thought of is like, I'm an addict and I'm forever going to be an addict and there's nothing to help me out of that position in life, that would be, rightfully very discouraging, right? But the hope is that we do have something that can help us. Another key part or goal of step 2 is to submit and humble ourselves. So, if we, for most of us, and definitely in my life, we can live at a place where we are functionally the God of our lives. And so this is putting ourselves in a humble place, having humility to acknowledge God or Jesus as our higher power, and to look for his guidance and not our own in our daily decisions. Our own decisions got us into this situation. So if we continue in recovery to make our own decisions purely of ourselves, that's a sign that we're not actually submitting ourselves to God. And finally, similar to that, another goal of step 2 is to outsource our decision making. So if we are going by our own definition of what's right and wrong, if we're going by the world's definition, or certain friends of ours that aren't following Jesus, these are things that are going to continue to take us back to addiction. So we have to outsource that decision making and give that to God. So yeah. So that's a very brief overview of what it's all about in step 2. I'm just going to crack the book now. There were a couple things, like I did last week, there were a couple questions when I read through them that I thought might be worth me kind of going over what my answer was to them and just kind of giving some explanations. So there were 2 questions that I thought I would just highlight here. So the first one is on page 20, again, in the Steps to Freedom workbook. And it is question 1. So the first one that appears under the A Power Greater kind of section. So the question says, give specific examples of coming to a point of belief in Jesus in different areas of your life. So it gives you three items or 3 lines where you can write in answers. So for me, the first one I wrote down was, so again, specific examples of coming to a point of belief in Jesus in different areas of your life. So the first one was hearing about heaven in Sunday school and asking God if I could come to it, basically, at a very early age. That was probably my initial goal, was that I wanted to be in this place called heaven. And so at a very early age, that was kind of one step where I came to a point of belief in Jesus. The second one I wrote down was realizing that I had an addiction and joining ARM, which is a local recovery group that I've attended for a while. Again, in a weird way, that reconnected me to God, because I realized that I've been working on my own strength and relying on my own strength for a long time. So I came to a point of belief in Jesus by admitting that I had a problem, which is what step 1 is all about. So, and the third thing I wrote was experiencing Jesus's sacrifice on my behalf in a powerful way on a particular Good Friday service after I joined recovery. So yeah, those were 3 things that for me were experiences that I would point to that I came to believe in Jesus in a new way. Obviously, there was a first initial step, but then there was follow-up steps where I learned more and recommitted my life to God. So, and the second question that I thought I would read out my answers to and kind of just go over is on page 23. And it is the third question down, and starts, the sentence says, explain how you have experienced Jesus Christ to be greater than all of yourself since you have chosen recovery. It gives 3 line items. I actually chose to just write it more in a sentence kind of format. But yeah, so explain how Jesus Christ to be greater than all of yourself. So I said, Jesus brings hope each new day, while addiction brought shame and guilt into my life. Jesus offers true relationship in a way that I cannot have by myself. So again, just outsourcing the fact that, like, left to my own devices, I can't have this sense of true relationship with anyone, especially a higher power. And so it was, the realization that Jesus Christ is powerful in these areas that has given me that hope and given me that ability to believe that and see that kind of working in my life. So yeah. So those were just a couple questions that I wanted to highlight for us this morning. Again, just be aware, there's a lot of repetitive questions in every single step of this book. So you will see similar questions just stated over and over again. And the point is to drive it into our thick skulls. And the point is to just look at things a little bit different and maybe find nuances here and there that are slightly different. So again, expect that. Saying right out of the gate, it's there. So yeah, that was step 2. Again, just some very brief suggestions on where to go from here. I would suggest setting a regular time to kind of work on recovery a couple times a week. When you're going to go and meet with somebody, put a star beside some of the questions that you thought were the most specific, or they were aha moments, or they really confronted you. These are the things you need to share with somebody else. So put a star beside the questions. After you've done the step, go back and read over it. And then read exactly to that person. Read it the exact way that I did. Just read out what you wrote to them. Don't embellish it, and don't kind of make it more or change your answer. And again, keep going. Don't stop. The biggest danger in recovery is to get stuck on a certain question because it's hard or it's awkward, or you just don't want to answer it, or you're just, feeling not particularly motivated. These are all things that you will experience, and it's not unusual, but it's just things to be, I guess, aware of and try and avoid. So and again, just a quick encouragement to try and find a sponsor type person, somebody who you can report your work to. It just means it gives a lot more meaning to these steps if you can have someone to report it with. And yeah, that person doesn't have to be perfect. They don't have to be a counselor. They just have to, have the ability to speak into your life and maybe ask you more questions if they think that you're hiding something, or if they're not, if they just want to hear a little bit more about a question, they can ask you more questions about that. So yeah, that is all that I kind of wanted to go over for step 2. So yeah, I wish you all the best for those who are watching this video, either now or in the future. You can reference this video again if there's anything that kind of comes to mind or concerns you have. And yeah, I wish you all the best in your progress on that. So I will leave that at that. So take care.